Hey guys, 59 Gaming here, back with another Godzilla video, and this is going to be our final sort of look back at the history of the Godzilla movie series, movie universes, whatever, because this time we are going to talk about the end of the Toho sort of Godzilla universe and plans for the future, as well as the MonsterVerse. And we also are planning on doing a separate video talking about the history of King Kong as well. So obviously with the Godzilla vs. King Kong basically here at this point, a few days away, we wanted to make sure that we covered absolutely everything leading up to that movie. But we're going to go ahead and jump into what we like to call sort of the modern era of Godzilla. You know, you have the MonsterVerse over here in the US, but you also have sort of the, I guess, new age, the new era in Japan. It's called the Reiwa era. I don't know if that's actually what they're going to call it, but I guess you can lump it all together in there. But it's interesting because now we sort of have a split off, right? We have a split off where in Japan, they are doing, the Shin Godzilla was the most recent Godzilla movie that came out. There are plans in the future to continue sort of that path, but then there's also a split path where they're doing a lot of animated stuff. There's a trilogy movie of all animated Godzilla movies, and then there's actually a Netflix series going on as well called Singular Point. So they're sort of experimenting with different things in this franchise, and then at the same time as all that's happening, we have another branch splitting off even into a different direction with the US MonsterVerse. So there's a lot of things we could talk about here. You guys want to start with Shin Godzilla, because that's sort of the only mainstay movie that we have over on Toho's end here for Japan.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a fun one, that's for sure. Like, that movie is so different from the original, like, recipe for Godzilla, because it's insane to me. I watched it, I was just like, what the heck am I watching? It's so good.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to agree. Like, the first time I saw it, because usually with these movies, they reveal Godzilla's design before the series or movie comes out, and I remember seeing it and I was like, okay. I was like, that actually looks like horrifying. Like, you can see like there's like flesh between the usual black hardened like skin, and like the teeth were all jagged. The eyes were like just like creepy. And I was like, whoa, what is this? And then obviously like a year later it came out in the US. They dubbed it in Funimation or whatever. But I really love this movie. I think it's probably top 5 or maybe like top 3 Godzilla films, because this is like their first movie, like we mentioned in the last video, which you should go check out, where we talked about the Millennium Era. We talked about how Final Wars was like the final film for basically 12 years, because Shin Godzilla was the first film with an all CG Godzilla as well. Mm-hmm. So and this was also a film that treated Godzilla very seriously, and you might find those very like political moments like in the offices and stuff boring. I found them very like engaging, entertaining some parts. But this is like the first time Japan's ever seen Godzilla. This doesn't have any continuity with the OG 54.
Yeah. I was gonna say, actually, because we talked about in the Heisei video that we did, where The Return of Godzilla, which is a 1984 movie, was a direct remake of the 1954 original Godzilla movie. I would argue that Shin Godzilla is a remake of that as well, because it's sort of like their first experience with this this creature that's come to destroy things. They don't know what it's doing, they don't know why it's here.
Godzilla.
That's right. It's a DOE's code name, Godzilla. 彼が英語で名付けていた。
Godzilla.
And it's just a story about how Japan is able to fend off this monster, and that's the exact same I guess storyline that they went through with the 1954 movie and then the 1984 movie as well. So it's sort of just like another remake where, according to what we know, they're trying to set up another sort of era here, where they're using this as a springboard to go into movies that are going to introduce other kaiju that we've seen, probably King Ghidorah, probably Mothra, all of the big ones that we've seen in the past. So this is like another reboot of this series, and but it's obviously much different, right? Shin Godzilla is not like the normal Godzilla that we know.
Yeah.
If I had to explain it, it's like the horror film of Godzilla movies. Like,
yeah.
point blank, like the whole time you're watching this movie, you're just wondering like what is going on, and then it's like the designs of these, like as Geek said, like the design of Godzilla, like in his, you know, fifth form is what they call it, is bizarre, and it's just scary to look at. But I love the direction that they went in this, especially with, you know, just the visual effects. And this is, you know, as far as when it comes to Toho's side of things, this is the first CGI Godzilla, and they did an outstanding job. This made me want the sequel to Shin Godzilla. It's so good.
Yeah, I think it's more of an artsy take on it, because there's also parts of the movie where I think a lot of people don't realize this, but all the scenes where they're like talking in like the government buildings and like all the different departments are talking to each other, it's actually satire, because the biggest critique that people have about the Japanese government is that it's so fragmented and bureaucratic that it's impossible to do stuff.
各社の意見では、たとえヒレのような足があっても水生生物が丘に上がると自重で潰れて死に至りますから、学術的に上陸は万が一にもありえないとのことです。え、カマタンに。
It's impossible to do anything without 50 people approving things. That's why you see throughout the movie people are like, do you approve this? And then they call the next person, do you approve this? And then the next person calls the next person, and it's like a never-ending chain of like approvals, and it's impossible to like communicate with anybody. That's like the biggest satire that went on in that movie, and people just watch that movie and just think like, oh, this is how it works or whatever, but this is supposed to be like funny.
That's actually a really like important point that I missed, was that it's actually like, because one of my there's a lot of scenes that happen in this movie where it's so hilarious when you watch it. It's just, I think it was the main character Rando Yaguchi. He's like, oh, what if there's a giant creature where this like steam and blood or whatever is coming from? Because everyone was like, oh, this is like a volcanic eruption or whatever. And he's like, oh, but what if there's a giant creature? And then all the prime minister and everyone is just like, don't be ridiculous, this is a meeting for people in charge. And then the next scene, the giant tail whips out and then they go up to the prime minister like, he's like, oh, turn on the TV.
That's also another sort of trope that happens as well, is because a lot of the older generations don't pay much attention to what the younger generations are like suggesting, or there's like new ideas that are coming up. They're just very strict in their old ways of doing things, and they don't want to change that. And that's what that was sort of, you know, hinting at there. And I think one other thing to mention as well is one of the biggest themes of the original 1954 Godzilla movie was the whole World War II sort of atmosphere that was going on. And that's sort of why Godzilla even existed in the first place, was because of the nuclear fallout that happened from World War II. And they sort of touch upon that a little bit in this movie as well, because there was one sort of suggestion from the U.S. where it's like, okay, we'll just nuke him. We'll just nuke Godzilla for you guys, and we'll just nuke Japan. And that was that was one of the suggestions that they made in order to get rid of Godzilla, because they had no choice. Like, there was no way they were firing everything they had. I mean, Japan has the defense force, but it's not like the U.S. So they have to. One of the things that goes on with Japan and the U.S. is they have a treaty where the U.S. is going to defend Japan. That's a real life thing that exists. And so they were trying to play into that. And one of the things that, like, plot points of the movie was the U.S. was going to come in and nuke Godzilla on Japanese grounds. And so that sort of harkens back to what happened in the first movie, where the whole thing that happened with Godzilla in the first place was because of that. So it's sort of like a mirror image of that, which is interesting. But Shin Godzilla was definitely a very weird take on Godzilla. I think it's more of a modern and artsy look on the monster in the franchise. But again, there are plans to move forward with Toho's monster. I guess I don't want to call it MonsterVerse, because that's literally what the U.S. one is called, but their universe for Godzilla. Separate from the animated series, but. You guys want to mention anything about the trilogy, the animated trilogy? I personally have not seen it yet, or Godzilla Singular. I think Godzilla Singular Point just started on Netflix, or maybe it's not out yet.
I don't think it's out yet. They had a trailer recently, so I don't think it's out yet. I think it's coming soon.
Yeah,
I'm not exactly sure. Yeah, I guess I'll start on the anime trilogy. Overall, I would say that the biggest thing I would say about the anime trilogy is just that it's very disappointing because they had a really cool concept of leaving the planet and then coming back, and essentially Godzilla is like king of the entire planet. Every like plant, every animal over the course of like I think it was like 10,000 years has basically adapted to Godzilla's like ecosystem, and like the plants are like sharp and like they almost look like they're like from Godzilla. Very dangerous. Like you could get cut just like standing next to it. All the life on Earth is very like prehistoric and stuff now. There's even like a society of people that still lived on Earth over time, but they just like it's because the whole I think idea from this movie, because Godzilla I don't think had the same origin, because he's very even his dorsal fins were very like plant-like, so I don't remember exactly what his origins were, but the whole idea for this trilogy was just basically respect nature and like treat it better, I would say, instead of just like, you know, like the whole reason they left the planet Earth because they nuked Godzilla and it didn't work, so they kind of just messed up their own home. So in a way Godzilla is just kind of existing as a way to just, you know, as a force of nature, which is a cool idea, very strong idea. But I think in terms of just the characters that they wrote was very like Eren Yeager, like light, I would call him, the main guy.
We'll take it back, no matter what, with our own hands.
And all the monsters that they promised were gonna be in the sequels, they just kind of dropped the ball. For the second one, City on the Edge of Battle, they're like, oh yeah, Mechagodzilla is gonna be in this and it's gonna be so cool. And then you find out Mechagodzilla like kind of like liquefied or something and like just adapted to its area and became a city. It's very like it was like okay, and it actually has like its own, like it's even toxic to the people, like it can absorb people into its like knowledge or ecos, whatever it was. It was very very weird. But the thing was the promotional material for these materials for this movie is that they had like actual designs of the monsters, and you're like, oh, we're gonna see this in the movie, and you never saw them, which is very bizarre. And then leading into the last one where they had King Ghidorah. King Ghidorah was like very cool idea of like this literal god between dimensions that even Godzilla couldn't touch. It was like a different plane of existence. It was literally gonna consume the planet. But then even then it was just like 3 heads that came out of 3-dimensional black holes, and then Godzilla found the way, and they helped him, and then that's it. So it's like it was just a very disappointing franchise for me personally, but it had very cool ideas, is all I'll say.
Yeah, definitely this in this general like era, like I feel like the movies went in very different directions, except for, you know, obviously the MonsterVerse movie. But I think right now, because of the fact that, you know, like we talked about in previous videos where it's mainly like Godzilla versus this, Godzilla versus that, and there's not a lot of like underlining plot for Godzilla, I think they were like, let's see what we could do like artistically, you know, especially with Shin Godzilla. The anime movies are on my list of watching all the way through. I've seen some clips. I believe the animation's really nice. I like the designs of some of the monsters, especially Godzilla. His design is very, in my opinion, threatening. Compared to the other ones, except for Shin.
Oh no,
But,
yeah.
But I would definitely say that these are, if you're Godzilla fans, they're definitely must-sees.
Yeah, I would say yeah. Even though that's my own personal opinion, like I would tell Garash or even Tyster, like, watch them. Like, as a Godzilla fan, you probably watch them, and you might even like him more than I do. It's just my own like personal thing, you know. But they're not like horrible by any means. They're not the worst things on the planet. So if you're a Godzilla fan, I will say at least check them out.
Yep. All right, so that was pretty much the Japanese side of things here. We talked about Shin Godzilla, we talked about the animated trilogy, as well as the upcoming Singular Point series on Netflix. And again, there will be, well, there's plans for there to be an expansion of sort of the Shin Godzilla created universe over on the Toho side of things coming up soon. But let's jump over to the MonsterVerse, which is really the culmination of why we even did this series in the first place, where, you know, Godzilla vs. Kong is coming out just a few days from when this video is supposed to go live. So I guess we'll sort of take a look back throughout some of the movies that have come out from the MonsterVerse. So we obviously had the first Godzilla movie back in, I think, 2014 that came out. Then that was followed up with Kong Skull Island, and I think a lot of people didn't even realize that that Kong Skull Island movie was supposed to tie into the same universe as the Godzilla movie was. So now with Godzilla vs. Kong, people are more aware of that, but it's interesting how they didn't really do, I don't think, a great job marketing that to people. But then we also finally did end up getting the Godzilla King of the Monsters movie, which was, I think, in my opinion, by far the strongest installment in this series, because it sort of does harken back to a lot of the other films that we've talked about throughout this entire video series with, you know, King Ghidorah, Mothra, Godzilla, Rodan, like the 4 big kaijus from the Toho monster universe were all in there, all fighting each other. Plus, we also have some new and unique kaijus that were introduced in this series that were sort of made by the MonsterVerse. So, legendary MonsterVerse. You guys want to say anything in particular about these movies? I think they were all pretty good. I didn't really walk out of watching any of these movies feeling disappointed. I mean, the first Godzilla one, the 2014 one, I feel like there could have been more, you know, monster action. I feel like there's a lot of emphasis on the human side of things, which I'm not really a huge fan of, but overall, I didn't think it was bad.
The ultimate thing that I found hilarious about that first one was just how they marketed the movie, because they marketed the movie with having Bryan Cranston, it made it seem like he had a major role in the movie.
Is that you're hiding something out there? I'm right, aren't I? My wife died here, and I have a right to know!
And spoiler alert, he doesn't have that much of a major role in the movie.
Yeah.
It made me laugh so hard because I was like, holy crap, they spent a lot of marketing on him, and yeah. So, but I like the first movie. I think that it didn't deserve as much flack as it did. It definitely deserved the flack about with Bryan Cranston, but like overall the movie was good, and same with King of the Monsters. Like they're both really good movies, and especially since there was that stigma with the 1998 Godzilla movie for America, like it had a lot to prove that we could make a good video or movie, you know. So the fact that they produced 2 so far, and now with the 3rd on the way, like I think it's been proven that in this day and age, you know, the MonsterVerse movies hold up compared to the other movies.
Yeah. I agree with that. Like the main thing, which by the way, I guess we'll obviously talk about Kong in the King Kong video, so look out for that. But for the Godzilla films in this MonsterVerse is very interesting because 2014 Godzilla, I believe, it was received better than King of the Monsters, if I'm correct, like critically, and I think maybe financially. But I think the weirdest thing about both of these movies was in 2014, I really love the atmosphere and the tone, and I think the sheer scale. I don't think no movie has done that before, where I love the scene where he shows up to Hawaii and he literally causes a tsunami and murders. I mean, it's sad, but he just by existing, he just kind of inadvertently killed a bunch of people.
Yeah.
Which another important thing about this MonsterVerse was that Godzilla's not a nuclear irradiated messenger from, as a grim reminder. He's perceived more as a hero, or more like an animal that is a alpha predator that is basically just trying to keep balance with the planet and all the other monsters that exist. So it's more so that than oh, he's just trying to terrorize for no reason, or as a message or something. Because he existed on the planet for years. They even said that they were trying to kill him in 54, but he didn't show up in person until the monsters started coming out. But I agree. I do have the same complaints aside from the cinematography and stuff. Like, I really loved when he first showed up, but then they just cut away immediately. And we don't even see that fight in Hawaii. It's like, oh, but like you just teased me.
Yeah.
Like he looks so cool. They're about to, and then you see like the kid going like, "Mommy, dinosaurs." And we see clips of it on the TV. I'm like, I want to show me. Like I want to be there.
Yeah. I mean, the movie does do a good job of harkening back to like sort of the original movie as well, because they even the main one of the main characters' names is Serizawa, which is the name of the scientist in the 1954 movie that created the oxygen destroyer. So they are sort of paying attention to the original source material and being respectful of that. And I want to just emphasize a point that Tystra made earlier, which was talking about the fact that the 1998 movie was such a disaster that, at least me specifically, I went into seeing this movie, I had very, very, very low expectations of this movie when I first was going to go into the theater and watch it, because, you know, the only other American-made Godzilla movie that we sort of have to go off of is that one.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was thoroughly impressed by how they did. And the biggest, more important than me, but the more important thing to talk about is the fact that the Japanese audience actually really did like this movie as well.
Yeah.
Which is sort of like the ultimate test, right? So past that test, and I think that's one of the main reasons why the series has done as well as it has.
And the CGI work in general with those two movies is just so good.
Oh my god. Phenomenal. That's why it was very like important to note that like that's, especially with the first one, maybe it definitely had a big budget, but that approach of not showing him too much was probably also an attempt to probably not blow their budget too much, because they funded the sequels and stuff more than I think the original Godzilla film, because like you said, they really were, well, let's make it, but you know, we're not exactly sure if, you know, because the audience was all trepidatious because of that 98 one. So but yeah, they knocked it out of the park. The design for Godzilla, they even updated it in King of the Monsters to give him like the more like leaf-like dorsal fins and stuff to make it look more like classic. But yeah, that's the important point by Garash, which is like the Japanese audience like loves this, or at least loved it or really liked it.
Yep. And in King of the Monsters, the one that released in 2019, so that was sort of the one with him, King Ghidorah, and Mothra and Rodan. They did, we talked about this in the Heisei video too, but they did go back and use the burning Godzilla form that was debuted in the Destroyer movie. So they are bringing things into the picture that were in some of the old Japanese films. So I'm going to be interested to see if they do that with this upcoming Godzilla vs. Kong movie. I mean, there's a lot they can pull from. Attacks, abilities, even monsters. So
let's get Lightning Kong in this one.
I mean, maybe. I do want to see that, because remember, we talked about that in the Showa video where somehow in their Godzilla versus King Kong fight, King Kong like got struck by lightning and he just like became 10 times stronger. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was getting destroyed. Yeah. And then he was like lightning, and he just gets up and he's like kind of blue now, and it's like, okay.
Maybe that's how he wins. I don't know. We'll see.
We'll see. But yeah, I think King of the Monsters in general is a very, very big love letter to like I think specifically the Showa era, like how the characters were, like even the human stuff, I didn't mind. Like I know some people complain about them, but like they were very much like the human characters in the Showa era, which is like a super zany plot with like impossible technology and like whatever. Like it was just fun. It's super goofy, because I mean you guys gotta remember, like when you're trying to compare plots to like Godzilla and try to hold a lot of the old ones like in a higher standard. I remember that in Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla there was literally like space apes controlling Mechagodzilla, so that were disguised as humans. So.
I mean, they even used the oxygen destroyer in the King of the Monsters movie.
An oxygen destroyer designed to exterminate all life forms within a 2-mile radius.
Like there's so much love for like the Showa era in that movie. That's like, it's such a big love letter.
Yeah, I saw some people speculating back when that happened was, they use the oxygen destroyer. This is a perfect chance for them to set up Destroya in the next one.
Dude, I want Destroya so bad in the Monsterverse, especially with the budget they have. Oh,
yeah,
man.
That would look really nice.
So good. First, they got to bring in Gigan. That's all I want.
Yeah, and Jet Jaguar.
Jet Jaguar, yeah.
Oh, he's in the post-credit scene, don't worry.
Can you imagine after the post-credit scene of Godzilla vs Kong is like the screen just goes black and the song just starts playing?
To me, it's gonna be that, or like it's gonna be even more hilarious because you know how they have those cave paintings that like have Godzilla like fighting all his rivals and stuff or whatever. What if like even though Jet Jaguar is supposed to be like a technical like a technology thing, what if they just have a cave painting out of nowhere like with Jet Jaguar?
It's just his face. And they're like,
Just
what?
like,
What does
That'd be good enough for me. I'll take that.
they're like the god above gods.
Yeah.
So it's like Jet Jaguar.
All right, well, we have talked about the Showa era. We've talked about the Heisei era. We've talked about the Millennium era. And we've just talked about the sort of modern Reiwa Monsterverse era here, where we are just a few days away from Godzilla vs. Kong releasing over in Europe and in the US pretty soon. So again, if you guys enjoyed this sort of video, let us know down below what your favorite movie is that has come out in the past 5 to 10 years for Godzilla, what your favorite monster is, and make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. This has been Goresh. I am joined by Taistra Daisetsu as well as Very Geek. This is 5-9 Gaming. See you guys all in the next one.
Bye, everyone.
That dudes.